It is easy, even tempting, to believe that the struggle of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the scores of other civil rights leaders and defenders of the last century is finished. After all, we learn about the civil rights movement as a bygone era, a boiling over of impassioned activism and dedication to human rights that has since been calmed to a simmer. But we are here today, celebrating Dr. King's legacy, because we know this is untrue. We know that Black children are being murdered by white police and vigilantes across the country almost too regularly to keep up with. We know that 1 in 5 college women will be sexually assaulted during their time on campus. We know that 40%... Stay back here. We know that 40% of homeless youth identify as LGBT, and 40% of trans people attempt suicide. We know that these fights, these mighty struggles for basic human rights and human decency are far from over. I grew up in northern Baton Rouge, Louisiana, a majority Black community. But for most of my young life, I went to a school in which there was usually no more than 1 Black student in my grade at a time. It was in this stiflingly white, straight, conservative environment that I first struggled with my sense of self-worth and belonging. I was a tomboy growing up. I rejected anything remotely girly. I refused to wear dresses when I could, and I always felt left out when surrounded by girls. There was something I knew was missing, a connection I was supposed to feel to the girl characters in movies, in books, in TV shows, the female-oriented advertising in magazines, the girl sections of clothing stores that I simply didn't have. A part of me was jealous of boys, of their clothes, their deeper voices, even their names. I learned to ignore those feelings. It wasn't until I transferred to a public high school my sophomore year that I was first exposed to true diversity. The majority of my friends, for once, were not white and had experience with racism and other forms of oppression. I finally became comfortable to explore my own experiences, my own sense of discomfort and powerlessness, and what that said about me as a person. I came out as gay in my school and was met with overwhelming support, a reaction I'm certain I could only have elicited at a school as diverse as mine. When I took my first girlfriend to prom, we were complimented profusely on our dresses and made to feel like any other couple at the dance. I began to see how people, especially young people, with ostensibly little in common, can understand one another based on their shared experiences of oppression and use that sense of unity to raise each other up. What has been most striking to me as I've become more socially aware and active in recent years is how young people have begun to use social media to fight for their rights. Older generations often claim that we are less empathetic, more self-obsessed, and less curious and thoughtful, since social media and technology have become such a big part of our young lives. I don't buy this line of thinking at all. I see more empathy and love in people my own age than ever before. In my eyes, the internet has offered people our age an even playing field, a platform for political discourse outside the ivory tower of higher education, access to more diverse people and ideas than could ever have been possible before the advent of social media. It allows us to see and experience each other's struggles, to get involved in more movements than the ones that affect us personally, to reach out to and defend one another. The internet is a place where we hear voices that we've hardly ever heard before. Latino voices, immigrant voices, the voices of Muslim women and Desi women and people with disabilities and trans women of color. In short, the voices of people who are usually too marginalized and sidelined and silenced to speak out for themselves. As Dr. King wrote in his letter from a Birmingham jail, one of the greatest problems faced in the civil rights movement of the 1960s was not only the hateful words and actions of the bad people, but also the appalling silence of the good people. The internet has offered more people a way to break their silence, to speak out against our society's ills, to tell their own stories, or to show solidarity for people suffering across the country, whether in Charleston, in Ferguson, in Lafayette, just an hour from my home, and even here at Tech. This is what I see people my age doing. Not just spending hours scrolling through Facebook and posting selfies, but speaking out and educating themselves more completely than we ever could have before. I see people my age heeding Dr. King's timeless warning every day that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. The internet has opened up the complex, diverse, intersectional world that we live in, and we are seizing the opportunity to lead the fights not only against those injustices that affect us individually, but the ones that affect our classmates, our friends, our peers. I also have the somewhat remarkable experience of coming out to myself and a few others, and now all of you, as non-binary during a particularly tumultuous and important moment in the history of the trans rights movement. Despite all the discomfort I felt growing up, I would never have been able to come to this conclusion about myself if it weren't for the resources and support I found online. But more than that, I don't think I would have been so accepted, so supported and loved if it weren't for the work that young activists have done in recent years, especially in online communities, towards raising awareness and acceptance of trans identities. 20 years ago, my mom couldn't have Googled non-binary genders after I came out to her over FaceTime. 20 years ago, I could never have seen positive portrayals of trans people in online TV shows like Orange is the New Black and Transparent. These resources simply didn't exist. And I don't claim that our generation is responsible for creating these tools that made this kind of progress possible. But there is something incredible about what a group of people who grew up in a time of truly free communication and information can accomplish when they tap into those resources. However, too many of us who identify as queer face violence, mental illness, and rejection. And despite all the ostensible progress that's been made in terms of race and gender equality, too many of my Black and brown friends face blatant discrimination by police and other authority figures. Too many of the women in my life have been victims of sexual violence. But in the words of Dr. King, oppressed people cannot remain oppressed forever. People always say that the world will be better when the next generation grows up and takes charge, but that time is now. Much of the hard work involved in changing our world is in finding the strength to love each other, to turn towards mercy and understanding when conflict and violence seem like easier solutions. And I believe our generation has a capacity to love and accept one another, rivaling any other generation in history. So to young activists who are struggling for a world more like the beloved community that Dr. King spoke of, a world where nonviolence and open communication and interconnectedness triumph over segregation and oppression, I say, we can fight for this ideal in ways with which we are very familiar. We form microcosms of a beloved community every time we create safe spaces online, or forums for discussion on sensitive topics that we were never quite able to tackle in school. We must not let the cynicism of older generations deter us. Our version of activism is not less worthy because it's new. We must claim our new tools of justice and use them to their fullest extent. We are in the midst of a new civil rights movement. One that, yes, involves hashtags and viral videos, but that is rooted in solidarity and intersectionality and a passion for justice that is untarnished by our steep opposition. Let us all find the courage to love one another wherever we can, that we may lead the world to become the community of love and fellowship of which Dr. King once dreamed.